What does Dreadflats hide behind the scenes and out of bounds? Dreadflats is a first-person Chinese horror game in which you're a paranormal investigator paid to check out an abandoned apartment building. It's a site of numerous disappearances, and the more you learn of the spirit responsible, the more nightmarish things get. In the main story, you escape without learning the truth, which is why the game was updated with a continuation that focuses more on Grandma Marbles and putting an end to this horrific haunting. We'll go through both sections of the game and break things along the way to show you things you typically can't see hidden out of bounds and off camera. So let's start. After a brief cutscene, we must walk very slowly through a small alley to the haunted apartment complex. Within, we gotta find the security office keys, flip the breaker to restore power, and set up shop in apartment 204. We were given the keys by the former tenant, who also requested this investigation, so hopefully they won't mind if we do a bit of redecorating. While roaming around to get some footage, you start occasionally hearing the noise of marbles dropping and bouncing on the floor. This is the first sign of this creepy entity, captured in multiple photographs we'll simply call Granny Marbles. In apartment 107, we'll get hints of other people being haunted by Granny Marbles, who makes her first appearance by slapping her hand on the wall, just inches from the camera. On the way back to bed, the sound of dropping marbles returns, and despite trying to track down the noise, the source is nowhere in sight. The main character tries to get some shut-eye, only to jolt awake after catching Granny Marbles watching him sleep. The closet is empty, front door is still locked, but there's something below the other room's bed. It's a rat. Without any sign of the intruder, we go back to bed directly into a dream sequence. Now we'll rewind time to break this section down. The title screen is a fully modeled scene, utilizing assets from the security office. Pulling back reveals this small office is an isolated set, floating in the void. Despite remaining off camera, there's a door, small basket, stool, and even a coat rack. If it wasn't for the cracked paint and cloud of dust, this would almost be kinda cozy. Getting into the main story, behind the screen, with text providing exposition, the driving scene is already set up. The car is placed outside this first square of land, driving forward after a moment. Hidden behind another screen of info, the car actually reverses back to the start, so we can get a first-person view of the same stretch of land. Throughout the video, there will be glimpses of the dark void visible, which the game's fog and VHS fisheye effect normally hides. When the area reloads, we'll see the apartment complex exterior shot, along with a different section setup for the eventual driving away scene. For some reason, there are also multiple textureless variations of clothing, a couple of stools, a metal knob, and even some random cords just sitting around in the middle of nowhere. While some of the buildings are fully modeled on all sides, with some of the interior shaped up, the alleyway is more of a proper facade. Overall, it's a pretty efficient setup. The apartment interior is mostly the same, only the rooms we end up visiting have modeled interiors. There are some objects out of bounds, mostly concentrated around apartment 204. The objects we unpack pop into place, same with the camera tripod. The piles of mess also teleport out of bounds once cleaned, and the messy bed pops over to the space behind another apartment store. I guess it's their problem now. Interestingly, the white arrow indicators aren't an element of the interface, but rather objects as well, so they're always loaded in. When you go to sleep, the game adjusts the scene, unloading certain things and loading in new ones. While this isn't unique, since most of the building remains in place, it's like the developers removed a few building blocks and stuck new ones on while we weren't looking. Not much happens until the player reaches apartment 107. When you look through the hole in the wall, Granny Marbles' human model loads in and just rotates to swing the arm into place and block your view. What's weird is that unlike most models, this single old lady doesn't appear anywhere out of bounds, at least for the first few appearances. She just pops in and out. She's just that powerful. On the way back, the marble noise comes out of an invisible sound source placed on a different floor, and is moved when you get close, so it's never possible to actually pin down. Now, here's the scariest thing so far. Apartment 204. Our home base? It doesn't make sense, like in an architectural sense. There are apartments on either side, and yet it has windows meant to be facing outdoors in both bedrooms and the kitchen, which even have rain fall against them later on. I'm getting bad flashbacks to the time I did a home inspection on the Fears of Fathom House. Perhaps the true curse of this place was the building codes broken along the way. Now let's push on to the next section. The dream sequence begins on the third floor. Following the sound of marbles, a small collection of them sit on the end of the hallway. With nothing else to investigate and nowhere to go, we turn around and start walking back to where we came from. A light goes out, and the hallway seems to be way longer than it was before. There are also distinct footsteps from behind, always just out of step with your own. More marbles come out of a glowing room, and then an ominous sign that reads "Leave now" distracts us just long enough for a tall, gangly creature to rush the player. Awake again, more odd things happen. A plate falls in the kitchen, the TV acts up, and the power goes out. This is where any rational person would just leave, and you can actually do that. Using the main door will cause the player to comment that they better retreat for now. As you power walk to the car, more slapping steps can be heard from behind. And while the car speeds down the road, a noise catches your attention. It's Granny Marbles, who immediately yanks the wheel and crashes the car, which is the secret bad ending. If you stick around, you'll have to restore power, go back to the apartment to plug in the camera, and then visit the bathroom. More marble noises lead the player to floor 4, and then the power goes out again. You'd think this haunted, abandoned apartment complex would have a more reliable electrical system. Anyway, we set up a camera to watch us sleep and lay back down just to get woken up again, this time by the sound of more marbles. The investigation takes us to apartment 407, where a note leads one floor down to 305. The door is locked, so we look inside through a massive hole in the wall where Granny Marbles appears out of nowhere, which is not cool. After more investigating, we put the camera back on the charger and take another trip to the bathroom. It seems the night's events are taking a toll on our character's body. While stuck in the stall, unsettling noises can be heard. From the building, not our character. Exhausted from the night of walking around and trying and failing to sleep, we return to bed yet again, just to be awoken by a crashing noise. Something knocked over the camera. We review the footage to reveal Granny Marbles climbed out of the dresser and crawled under the bed, the same one we just got up from. Our character tries to leave, but Granny has other plans. She chases us back into the bathroom where we hide in a stall, only to be jump scared and taken to some other new location. Jumping back to the first dream sequence, this happens on the 3rd floor, but a new hallway of repeated sections has been added to one end. When the light bulb pops, the wall and debris normally hidden in a shadow disappears, which is how the game sells the uncanny feeling of the hallway going on for way longer than it should. Out of bounds, above the new hallway, is an unstretched tall man resting in his default A pose. Without the height, I guess this means he's just man? When the player interacts with the sign, the man is teleported into place and his model's bones are stretched as part of his animation. After rushing the player, the jump scare frame is actually a pre-rendered image placed in one of the bathrooms. It's as if the tall man snuck up on the player just to show off his sick Photoshop skills. Jumping forward, after entering apartment 407, the door is swapped with his out-of-bounds twin, this new one having a lock. Additionally, the flesh hallway is now loaded up above the 4th floor. Granny Marbles sneaking out of the dresser and climbing under the bed is done as seen on camera, but the camera angle hides the fact that she's actually clipping through the objects under the bed. For the first time, you can get jump scared by the granny herself, which takes place out of bounds, with textureless black rectangles serving as the backdrop. When hiding in the bathroom, Granny Marbles teleports to the other side of the door, so she can pop out after the player looks away and back. Normally at this point, the light turns off, and slow, fleshy footsteps can be heard getting closer. Behind the scenes, it's even creepier, as the steps are being emitted from a tall man that is actually walking towards the player's hiding spot. There's not much to be said about Granny's jump scare, but dang, with her tongue and lips that black, she should definitely get that checked out. Perhaps a dentist. Can't be cursed next. The dolly shot of the apartment, becoming all gross and nightmarish, is done by simply teleporting the camera from the 2nd floor to the previously mentioned flesh floor. We'll cover the car ending off camera in just a bit, given there's another part that involves a car, but let's press on for now. From here, things get pretty dangerous. You must run from Nightmare Granny, crawling and hiding when necessary. The layout of the apartment building has changed, forcing you to sneak around unfamiliar rooms to keep moving onwards. Along with the appearance of flesh-like growths on the interiors, multiple tall men, as we'll call them, stalk the player. The final room gives us a solution on how to escape this nightmare. To be free of Granny Marbles, we must forget. And to forget, our character gives themselves a lobotomy with a conveniently placed hammer and nail. This causes them to wake up back in apartment 204, as if this was all a nightmare. They then head home. Just before the game ends, Granny Marbles smiles at the camera from under the bed. Before delving into the continued part of the story, let's break down what just happened. Whenever you're jump scared by the big-headed nightmare granny, it takes place in an empty hallway out of bounds, near the new basement area. Also, at any one time, there are now multiple instances of granny throughout the complex. When you leave the bathroom, you can actually turn around to see the furniture slide into place to block you from hiding again. As soon as you reach the next bathroom, the chasing granny stops in place, and the next chasing granny loads in, already looking away. So how about hiding in the stall? Well, the chasing grandma will duck in and look around, swapping back and forth from her A pose, before clipping through the fallen shelf and disappearing. Onwards, the second floor has been modified to have a wall block in the hallway, hiding 2 more copies of Nightmare Granny, ready to perform a jump scare for the security camera. The first floor has an extra wall blocking its hallway, and blank wall hiding the security office, all of which sells the idea of the curse twisting the world around you. When you go through the front door, a new hallway leads to a copy of the office. Watching the TV makes the camera teleport over to floor 2, where one grandma walks forward, then swapping with the other model, which has a bigger head and smaller body, moving kind of like a worm. While this is happening, the office door closes, and the room's left wall literally slides away, stopping just out of bounds, which just adds to the confusing architecture. Nothing special is going on in the first stealth room, but when you use the door to exit, the game teleports you nearby into a new room and unloads the rest of the apartment complex, aside from the granny jump scare hallway. It also loads the rest of the building you'll be sneaking your way through. After the next stealth room, when you grab the key from the dresser, numerous tall men appear out of nowhere. Literally, they're not anywhere out of bounds beforehand. They don't move their bodies, so it's hard to tell, but their heads do track the player's movement just enough to be unsettling. Next is another chase sequence. For this one, the first granny spawns in behind the player and falls around the corner just until the player notices the second granny, who was waiting there the whole time. At the same moment, the first granny disappears and a bunk bed appears to block the path you just came from. It's a simple setup, but it makes it seem like she's impossible to escape from. More chasing leads to a door, and the final area transition. It's hard to see normally, but right behind the door you just came through are a bunch of tall men staring at you. Speaking of sight, the lobotomy scene is way more tame without the noises and camera angle. A separate hammer and nail appear close to the player's view, and the hammer doesn't even touch the nail. That's probably for the best. After waking back up in apartment 204, you're expected to immediately leave the building. If you try to go upstairs, the character will say they must leave. Perhaps this is because they secretly know floors 3 and 4 no longer exist, or at least, they're no longer loaded in. As mentioned earlier, the scene was already set up for your getaway in the car. Leaving at the end of the game has Granny Marbles hanging out on the side of the road. When you leave early for the bad ending, her model is clipping through the car. After interacting with the car, Granny repositions to be in the passenger seat, but her legs are clipping through the bottom, as if she's going to power the car herself, Flintstone style. When the camera swings over, she's sitting, and as she yanks the wheel, the car actually turns to the side and just keeps sliding off into the distance. Sick drift, bro. Starting back in the protagonist's room, the Dread Flats continued story has our dream lobotomized paranormal investigator heading to a new location for another job from the same desperate fan. They've also been tormented by Granny Marbles, and we must solve this case for good. Things are immediately more dangerous, as the Granny will start attempting to catch the player before we reach the building in question. After entering the location, we're funneled upstairs, then forced to backtrack. This starts another brief chase, then a jump scare, and then we end up in a padded room with a TV and a safe. The TV shows the first in multiple tapes, this one giving a hint on how to progress. The kitchen has a key, but the door is stuck shut with a plank of wood. After giving it a nudge with a surprisingly long stick, we retrieve the key and use it to unlock a room back on the second floor. Within is a trove of research into Granny Marbles, including a laptop with multiple video files. It seems we're just the latest in a long line of victims. One bit of footage has us swap POVs over to the person who paid for the initial investigation, and this one. We see firsthand as Marbles shows up in the person's bathtub, and then the power goes out. Luckily, there are candles nearby. Unluckily, something breaks, which gives Granny Marbles a chance to show up and rush the player. The footage ends after she pops up one last time, blowing out the candle. With that, our character continues watching clips until one shows a hint on where to find the next key to progress. Before that though, we have a lot to analyze. So let's turn back time like Cher. Unlike the vast majority of the game, the player has a model while laying, which is lifelessly staring at the ceiling. He's fully clothed, has a face, eyebrows, but the top of his head is just not there. Maybe his barber misunderstood when he was asked to take a bit off the top. Zooming out, we can see that the normal Granny Marbles model appears in position, and then the Nightmare Granny spawns in, poised to spook the player, sliding left to right. Both the player model and Granny disappear when the player's camera moves. The apartment is basically the same as before, but the bathroom is actually modeled this time. Otherwise, there's not much of note in this room. The only asset placed out of bounds is the computer screen, ready to swap with the empowered screen after the player interacts with the bathroom faucet. When you interact with the door to leave, a black screen covers your view, and the player sits here until loading into the new location. The scenery here is a bit more detailed than the base game. For one thing, it has a ground texture stretching across the whole area. For another, the majority of the buildings are modeled on all sides, and more trees are spread around the place. Over to one side is a stretch of walls and a single turn. This is where the Granny jump scares occur. Also out of bounds are copies of both Granny Marbles' human and nightmarish design. When you're walking through the angular hallways, Granny will teleport into place under a light, then teleport away after being seen. Doing this removes the need for any fancy tricks by the developer to hide her disappearing, while also selling the idea that the curse is getting so strong, there is less need for subtlety. During this section, the smaller building that serves as this story's setting remains an untextured, rough building, but the area reloads certain things when interacting with the front yard's door. The section with the car and jumpscare alley are gone, and now there's more trees spread around, along with some ambient mist covering the ground. The main building also loads in its interiors, though not everything is yet visible, as its floor plan will change as the story progresses. That said, we can fly around to see that for the rooms that are loaded, every interactable is also in place. In the back is a hatch for the cellar, but for now, the space below is completely empty. There are also no more grandmas out of bounds, which somehow has me even more on edge, at least before we had an idea where they'd be coming from. Speaking of which, after exploring everywhere upstairs, walking back to the top of the stairs causes the stairwell light to shut off, and Granny Marbles waddles her way towards the player, then is shifted back and starts again, because otherwise you'd have gotten caught as soon as the cutscene ended. If she catches you, another classic closed-off hallway jump scare occurs, this one in a small room placed below the map. When the player enters the bedroom and closes the door, Granny will move towards the door, then A-pose as the knocking noise occurs. When you check the window, which weirdly enough opens into the hallway, she'll spawn staring at the window before being teleported into the room. After the player enters the padded room, Granny Marbles will walk away, and physically getting farther to make the steps recede. She slides straight away and clips through the walls until disappearing. When you interact with the TV, the footage that plays is a pre-rendered cutscene. In fact, the continued story uses a bunch of pre-rendered clips, while the base game had one moment using CCTV that moved the camera and acted out the footage in real time. There are actually 12 video files, all with varying names, some being the same length, but different iterations based on the file creation dates. I've renamed the files to have the English translation appended to the end where possible. This one, which translates to Surveillance Selfie, and is copy named with a bunch of J's, shows Granny Marbles sneaking up and scaring the protagonist, which never actually plays in game. The decline cutscene also went unused. The footage depicts a person exploring the forest and spotting a bright red scarf tied on a tree branch. The screen fades to a shot following a person, then cuts to a shot following Granny through that same bit of forest. The last shot seems to depict the cameraman falling off a cliff. The interpersonal relationships cutscene also went entirely unused, showing characters in the various rooms just going about their lives. The lady in the red dress in room 302 is cleaning the floor with a very glitchy mop. The red dress we saw outside presumably belonged to her. The man in room 401 is fast asleep, turned away from the camera. The guy in room 302 is also snoozing away, but instead on his couch. The person in 301 is standing on a chair, maybe hiding something in a box. And the lady in 201 walks over to a weirdly bright plate of food and gestures over it. Flat pizza texture, my favorite. While the purpose of this cutscene is unclear, I think it was going to be used to characterize other people who fell victim to the curse behind Granny Marbles. Videotape 00223 also seems to be unused, showing whoever placed the board to keep the kitchen door closed. This might have been the original way they intended to hint on where to go after seeing the first tape. The rest of the clips are variations of ones you do see in game, but some of them have been polished or rearranged. When the POV swaps to the other person, the map doesn't end with just that player's apartment. A decent chunk of the rest of the building is modeled, including some elevators, which means this is likely where they recorded the aforementioned clips of people being stalked by Granny Marbles. There are actually 4 different copies of our favorite grandma placed outside the apartment. One of these teleports into place to be seen via the door's peephole, and another to stand ominously in the room. I believe that when Granny starts walking, that's the third one swapped in, rather than using the same model and turning off and on the animations. Also out of bounds is a woman in a flowery dress, who doesn't appear anywhere in the game, standing on an exterior ledge. I wonder what her original purpose was. For whatever reason, there's also an Unreal Engine mannequin standing outside next to some garbage cans. Oh, and when the player character holds a candle, he has his other arm twisted backwards out of sight. That can't be comfortable. Let's move on in the story now. So the key outdoors lets us access another second story room, but this one just has a bunch of chairs, which conveniently slide out of the way for us. How nice. Peering through the hole, Granny peers back before disappearing, revealing the code we need for the safe. Within is a VHS recording that we must watch in the cellar in the back of the building. The footage doesn't show much, just someone trudging through a windswept place, full of red fog. After leaving the cellar, the sky is now red, and everything is worse. What fun. The building is decaying, overrun with more fleshy bits, and Nightmare Granny is roaming around. At a certain point, getting caught is inevitable, as it sends you back to the chair room, which is very briefly filled with tall men staring down at you. Exploring around, a new hallway appears, which leads the player to that same windswept location, which turns out to be the path to the original haunted apartment complex. It might not be obvious, but we're back on the 3rd floor, and we finally get to break down the blocked off room. Within, a character dumps every piece of evidence surrounding Granny Marbles and lights it up. The fire spreads, and we head down a hatch into a small cave system. Nightmare Granny worms her way after us until a convenient chunk of rocks blocks her path. If I understand the story right, the tall men are previous victims, disfigured and changed by the curse. By destroying this tombstone, the curse can be broken once and for all. The curse's puppet, aka Granny Marbles, turns to stone as well, shattering into pieces. Our character wakes up outside the smaller building as the fire blazes on, and the story comes to a close with everything seemingly all wrapped up. So let's break this down now. Back in the chair room, adjusting the camera reveals that they did the eye in the hole trick by having Granny appear clipped right into the wall before pulling back and disappearing. When you touch the hatch to enter the cellar, the area reloads. This spawns the cellar itself, makes the hole much larger, and turns everything all red and spooky. The courtyard is no longer used, so it's been mostly removed to make space for an additional hallway. The start of more floor plan shenanigans. When you get outside, a Nightmare Granny appears to chase the player through the new alley. You're expected to get caught, so even if you move fast, a second Granny leaps out at the end of the path. After waking back up in the stair room with all those tall men, the way forward remains hidden at first. Interacting with the paper in the padded room causes a wall to disappear at the top of the stairway. The glowing red doorway effect is done by having a red rectangle placed behind the door. Its red emissive material gives the otherwise unseen exterior a really creepy vibe. Fittingly, the red doorway leads to the nightmarish windswept outdoor area. Zooming out, it's unique compared to the exterior seen in the base game, with rocks lining the path to the Dread Flats. Flat, like the term used for an apartment. Technically, this game could have changed nothing and be named Scary Building. The area has a few dead trees decorating the ground, and a ridiculously steep cliff off to one side. Periodically, the whole place will be lit up red, with some spotlights of white to simulate the lightning. If you're curious, the dark doorway you came out from has nothing on the other side. It's just the inside of a rock. Once you enter the main apartment complex, the interior seems to be roughly the same as when the player experiences the first dream sequence. The unstretched, tall man is even positioned above the extended hallway. All this goes unseen as the stairwell is blocked by a wall. Also different, this time the brick-covered doorway actually leads to a modeled room. Just out of bounds is a pre-lit fire asset, which is moved into place when the evidence is doused in gas and ignited. The hatch causes the entire area to reload. Weirdly enough, far off in the distance from this tunnel system is the fire asset, perhaps the same one we just saw. When the player reaches the hallway, it teleports to one side to provide more ambience. As for the tunnel system itself, some chunks of rock are hidden outside, as is Nightmare Granny in her worm form. When the player passes through the trigger, she teleports into place and phases straight through the walls and moves on a set path. When you reach the first turn, a section of rock teleports up from out of bounds, blocking the path. Despite not moving her arms or legs, she manages the corner quite well. When you get caught, Granny continues worming along, passing right through the player. More than once, in the time just before everything resets, I rode atop her legs like a giant nightmarish skateboard. When you interact with the wooden boards blocking your path, they instantly swap to a broken pile, and Nightmare Granny follows by clipping straight through the walls. It's weird that she has the power of intangibility up until another rock blocks her path. Peeking through reveals she's still wiggling in place. It seems they did this whole sequence with a single animation on a loop, which is quite ingenious. There's not much to be said about the final room. What you see is what you get. But what's this? It's a haunted sledgehammer. How spooky. When the cutscene starts, the hammer swaps for a larger one, and despite its movement, it just barely taps the tombstone. After the second tap, the tombstone slides down, and a broken version slides up. Behind the player, the fire asset slides into the hallway, and the broken Granny appears before the woman herself. In the final shot, fire emitters have been placed throughout the smaller apartment building, and that's it. We've covered basically everything hidden out of bounds and behind the scenes of Dread Flats. Thanks for watching, and cheers!